and we'll make sure you don't have to fall in the trap of an altar call as you're moving up here. So, I'm Robert Langford. I have been part of this congregation for the most part for almost 62 years, baptized in early 1964, wherever the font was at that time in the nave. Except for the time that I left to go to college, when I worshiped beer and chasing girls, and when I moved back here when I was 30, this has been my spiritual home, and I'm really delighted to be here with three people I have incredible admiration for. We're going to talk today about sort of our work of community partnership, and we're going to talk about the Great Commission, and we're going to talk about loving our neighbor as ourselves through the lens of sort of the experience of these folks here. We're going to have a conversation, and we'll have some questions at the end. We're going to be racing. We don't have a lot of time, but let me just sort of frame up that the sort of theme of today in this conversation is us versus them. So sit in that for a minute. And I do want to mention that, as you all know, this parish, this community has a long tradition of being a leader in what we kind of generically refer to as outreach, or things that are about addressing fault line issues around race, around ethnicity, around hunger, around sexual identity, around health, around gender, all of those things that we've been really reckoning with since the 1960s, and we ain't done reckoning with, to be quite frank. So just kind of sit with that. I do want to mention too that the cathedral, I can't remember the number of organizations that parishioners and our resources are supporting. They certainly include the work that we do at Stupod, at Operation Shoestring, and a few others. Habitat, and I say this, I want to be very clear about this, Habitat is not actually in our grant funding right now. So Meryl and I had a wonderful spirited conversation about that the other day. So the other thing to think about too is we are in this stewardship season, wrapping up our stewardship season, and I do believe that our budgets, our family budgets, our organizational budgets, our church budgets are moral documents. So where and how we spend our money really is a reflection of what are our kind of moral and strategic priorities in the context that we're currently operating in and that we anticipate operating in. So think about that as you are thinking about closing out your pledges for this year and your pledges for the upcoming year. No pressure though. And if you want a list of who the community partnership entities are that the parish supports, there are about 8 or 10. One of them that's not on there, and it's on our website, the cathedral's website, is Working Together Jackson. And if you see any other entities that don't need to be on there, reach out to Will Oakes, who's our communications director, or let Ann or another member of the team here know. So, just quick introductions to these folks whose work I have admired and followed for a long time. I'm going to start furthest away with Meryl McEwen. Meryl is the, I don't know, you CEO, Grand Poobah of Habitat for Humanity of the Capital area. And Meryl has done that work for a long time. She, even before that, she was engaged in lots of stuff that was about the community and getting it done. If you know Meryl, that is her MO, getting it done. And Jill Barnes Buckley, I knew Jill when she was Jill Barnes. Jill, and exactly, she's only about 20 years old right now, so when she was 5. I got to know Jill through the work that I was part of at Operation Shoestring when she was an associate pastor at Northminster Baptist Church, which of course is the last stop on the Baptist train before you get to Episcopalville. True. So Jill is just, and she, the way that I got to know her really was that a central part of her work as community minister, I forget exactly what your title was to work in the neighborhood where most of Operation Shoestrings work was. So she was doing what I call sort of street level Jesus work. So she really done amazing work. And the person to my immediate left is Vondaris Von Gordon, who is really one of my kind of spiritual mentors. Vaughn was with the William Winter Institute for Racial Reconciliation for a long time, and then with the successor to that, the Alluvial Collective. Now he is doing also freelance Jesus work, and he's also a member of our board of directors at Operation Shoestring. I would consider him a friend. I also, my executive committee has yet to do my evaluation for this year. I'll do that in a couple of weeks. So what I say. So what I would like to do is to kind of talk about from each of y'all's perspectives, and we really only could find 3 of these. One of the chairs appeared. That's why I'm behind this thing. So from each of your perspectives, I want to talk about what I have observed. It's not new, but it seems to be really challenging right now, and I don't see a way out of it. Increasingly in our community, in our nation, in the world, this dichotomy of us versus them. And I want to ask each of you sort of what your experience has been, sort of fairly briefly, or how you process that, and how that manifests in your work, in your vocational work. A lot of us see it in terms of trying to figure out messaging around resource development, in terms of generating alliances with other people, whether it's volunteers. Kind of what has your experience been in that space? Can I start with you, Meryl?
Sure. Thank you very much for including me and Habitat for Humanity Mississippi Capital Area. I'm going to answer your question. Before I do, I'm going to tell you 3 things, and at the end, I'm going to ask you if you remember. It's sort of like that dementia test you have to take when you get to a certain age. Jimmy Carter didn't start Habitat. Millard Ford did. From the land of a man who believed one man could make a difference. Habitat does not give houses away. We build and sell houses, build, rehab, and refurbish Habitat houses with a 30-year zero-interest mortgage to make them affordable. And the third is we do not consider ourselves a charity. We are an economic engine because of the people that we not only hire and pay as subcontractors and contractors and craftsmen, but also because our homeowners become taxpayers and give back to the community in a way that multi-generational renters can't. To answer your question, this is a great question, is what I'm seeing is a weariness, an attitude of, we've been doing this for so long. I suffer from it sometimes. I have to be short up on my friends and counterparts. We've been banging this drum, we've been doing this work, and I think a lot of people think someone else is handling that. In fact, that's why we had the spirited conversation, because I said I'm so glad to be included. You know, St. Andrews doesn't do anything for us anymore, which is difficult for me as a communicant of St. Andrews. Many years ago, we were taken out of the line item budget in deference to the great idea of a drawdown, a cooperative fundraiser. And since that time, we have not received anything. I mean, we went way back in some documents. We also, regardless of the Herculean effort by Thorne and Bill, haven't had anybody from St. me, this weariness translates into what do we do now? I think the younger folks, if you look around this room, the younger folks work harder at a work-life balance. They're not gonna get their Saturdays up when they need to be at soccer games or basketball games or one of the hundreds of things children are engaged in. And those of us of a certain age, and I do have a birthday on Thanksgiving, so I'll be 70, and I'm very proud of that because there are a lot of reasons I shouldn't have survived. We have to encourage and help and make us and them us. And the same thing with funding. I think the younger generation is more mindful. Ooh, is that a sign for me to stop?
No.
How difficult it is for folks to actually give. It's not a generation or two of people who have the same philosophy of philanthropy that perhaps our parents and that we did. So it puts us in a position where we're back to it, we're working on it, we're back to where we were always. And I think there's some fatigue that comes with that. Do you find that to be the case?
So, I agree. I actually have two answers, kind of two sides of the same coin to this us versus them question. And my first thought is that, one benefit that STUPOT has is that it is easy to both understand and get behind, like, our basic mission, right? So, so we don't have to do all the extra work of communicating that maybe Meryl or Ron have had to do. But what that means is that we can draw a very wide kind of representation of the community toward a common effort and a common goal. And so when I talk about our work at STUPOT, sometimes I'll just say, it gives me hope because there still are a few things that we can agree on enough to do together. So like when we get to a point of despair, we can look at, oh, okay, well, there are some things that we can still do together and not have to get separated into our plans. So STUPOT is a place where you can experience that almost any day of the week. On the other hand, increasingly in our city and the metro area, there is an us versus them kind of frame for homelessness in general. Homelessness is perceived as a threat to our community as a whole. And so there's a lot of kind of the othering of people who are experiencing homelessness, mostly by people who are not connected to homeless ministry or some sense of what the reality on the ground is. I understand that, but I do think it's part of my role is to kind of help us get beyond that sense of like people who are homeless are enemies to our community, not individuals, but like as a presence, homelessness as a presence, something we have to combat.
Welcome.
Wow. I spent the last few months working with the Immigrant Alliance for Justice and Equity, led by Amy Quiroz. And one of the most interesting things about going into that experience is I don't speak Spanish. And when my wife asked me about it, I think it was a little weird to her that I was not bothered by it. In part because, I think in ways we all have a migration experience, right? The things that are challenging for people, the way that they are othered, or the way that we walk into a space hoping for, assuming welcome, but you run into walls, weirdness, things that you can't quite explain. That's something all of us experience. So when, for people who have made out to use our immigrant, people who look like they might be immigrants, right? Some of the ways that we allow ourselves and we allow our government and members of our community to treat them, I think it's often rooted in like our inability to remember what their experience feels like fundamentally. Yet, it is usually like some of our most indelible memories. Like the places you felt the most sad are probably the places where you expect the welcome. So, I think, they are always like the people whose experience is convenient for you to ignore. I can't remember who said it first, but Susan Blister was one of the people I will hear say it often, right? It's hard to hate somebody whose stories you know. Yeah. And the crazy, like, when we're thinking about oftentimes who they are, they have experiences just like we do. We just maybe because of a blessing here or there, get to put the trauma of it behind us, so we don't have to live with the constant reminder. In the book of Mark, and it's weird to me that I'm the first person to mention scripture.
It's an Episcopal church.
But in the book of Mark there's a scripture that talks about what we do. We look at ourselves in the mirror, turn away and forget what we look like. Right? And one of the ways we do that is we make other parts of the human family not parts of the human family. Like we are inextricably linked. And her afro is in my mind right now. Sister Davis, Angela Davis, asked a question once, probably 10 years ago. I heard her ask this question on a panel. She said, who told us that borders in nation states were the best way to organize ourselves? And I never imagined a world without borders and boundaries. But when we create them, like built into them, even though like my daughter says, she's blown away that you can't, and there's no line, like there's no physical, touchable line between the United States and Canada. They embody so much that allows us to divorce ourselves from the rest of the community. And I think we have to start to address that in order to build from like neighbor-to-neighbor relationships to group relationships.
Let's explore that, because I think the fatigue and the othering and sort of the creation of these kind of false borders, but sort of figuratively and literally, right? What's that about? Like, where does that come from? You had a conversation this week about Rich Harwood and
Yes.
people turning inward. But as we think about, in the Episcopal baptismal covenant, we're supposed to respect the dignity of every human being, right? It says so right there, right? To be baptized in this remains, and that comes from some other place in the Bible, I believe. Right? There's also the Great Commission that she brought up in our conversation in my office this past week. We know that stuff is there, and yet. So I wonder, and this is to any of the three of y'all,
May I answer it first? And I promise that I'll be brief. It'll be the shortest answer, probably of all the ones I get. Fear.
Exactly.
Like
That's-
fear.
that's
Fear
it.
is the thing. Fear is it. Rich in their work, and lots of other people do this well, talks about the importance of turning outward rather than turning inward. We turn inward, like we do this when we're afraid. Right? We do this when we're not worried anymore. We run around, we hug folks. Like walking in this room, I know more people in here. then I don't know, right? And for a 45-year-old black man from William, Mississippi, it's really pretty, oh, I almost cursed. That's pretty doggone exciting. But it is fear, and I honor fear. I think if we pay attention to people's fears, like we are paying attention to like the soul of it. Because the things that we are afraid of animate us, right? We either run away from something or run to something because we're afraid. And you know, when we can be in community with other folks who are afraid of the same thing, our fear deepens at the same time that our connection to other human beings grows. So I understand how it happens.
And fear manifests in all
In
these
every-
different
all
ways.
kinds of stuff.
Really violent ways.
Yes.
And really subtle, but
Absolutely.
sort of nefariously destructive ways too, right?
And our imaginations just go wild with the things that we're afraid of.
So how do we manage that? I mean, I'm not to cut off that wonderful line of argument around fear, but kind of, I mean, I ask, you know, you're trying to get houses built and you know, help the economy for the city, right? Not just for those families, but for the city. I want to be real clear about this ripple effect, right? And, you know, and Jill's work to take care of hundreds of people on a daily basis. And that also includes lots of children and children's programs. I want to be clear about that. We don't think about that often about student life. But y'all are also, you're trying to manage fear that manifests in lots of different ways. So how do you do that? It's really hard not to feel like you're putting out fear fires every day.
Well, my thing is, and it's true, the committee in my head, when they decide whether I'm going to be afraid or brave or, you know, and it's, I think we all have to own that we have all the movie that Amy Poehler did about the emotions, you know, we have to choose who we're gonna listen to. And it's not an outward thing. I think in my Christian faith, it's a lot of conversations with God. Oh, and I am gonna cuss. What the hell am I supposed to do now? You know, because something happens that came in like a Scud missile and blew everything up, and I have to listen to the right voice. Once I empowered those voices to have the fear, I sound a little schizophrenic, so I'm not, but, you know, think about it.
We all are.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. But when you work through all those emotions and you honor them, and you say, I get that, I understand that, then you can deal with the people out there who don't know how to silence those other feelings. And you can address those other feelings without condescension, or anger, or frustration, but real love and understanding that, you know, I know that you're afraid to go in that neighborhood, but, you know, we're gonna do everything we can, but the other piece of this, I had this conversation with someone who said, why would someone want to live in X neighborhood? And I said, because if you drive around enough and you see the other neighborhoods, you see how, well, come on in, man. Come on. Right to the front. You know, you've got all this other. You don't know that there's such a place that is so much worse, that this is the best for them. And that's where I think our affluence and education and abilities have to be gently removed so that others can see the good work that is being done, even if they think it's, you know, fruitless and futile. It does make a difference. It does change generations of families. So,
Jim, what's your way of kind of managing that fear dynamic in terms of messaging with folks or leading by example? Because there is a lot of, you articulate that beautifully about the uttering of these people. Like, how do you kind of manage or lead by example to kind of to work through that to get your work done?
I lead with curiosity, like myself. We were in a group training for our leadership team, and somebody at the table said, "Who asked the most questions?" And everybody pointed to me. And said, like, I literally follow till the end of my curiosity when I'm trying to determine what do I need to do for this person, how do I need to lead this effort, you know, what does Stupot need from me, from us, and that comes from a place of learning to have that internal conversation, right? Maybe because in my own spiritual journey, I have discovered within the ground, like the place where I can stand. And I know if I can return to that ground, that I will have clarity and a sense of peace. So it's really just following my curiosity until I get to the end of it. And I do think that's a model for, at the very least, the team that I try to lead, because it's easy to make assumptions about a lot of people. And kind of an answer to your previous question about fear, I was kind of sitting here thinking, listening, and thinking about like, okay, well, what do I think about that? Is it fear? And I kind of was going with ignorance, but then I was like, you know, you just don't know. Like, it's hard to hate somebody whose story that you know. But I do think that at the bottom of like just being either willful or very ignorant is fear, right? It is that sense of like, how will this impact me? You know, what am I going to have something to do after I finish? You know, getting to know this person. Am I going to have to change? Anyway, my answer to your question is, I get curious.
That's great.
So,
May I add something?
please.
So, Matt Chandler, Texas-based mega church pastor. Many years ago, I heard him preach a sermon where he said that the hallmark of the Christian life is that we cannot be afraid to be made a fool of. Our energy is precious, our resources are precious, to us especially, right? We extend ourselves to things that we feel some degree of certainty won't make a fool out of us, won't embarrass us socially. We won't regret those things. To me, with that, and what animates me, fortunately or unfortunately, is conviction. Right? When I spend time in Genesis and Revelation, sometimes conviction is the loneliest but most overpowering thing. And when I close and get up, I gotta make sure I do some stuff today so I don't feel that quite as much when I open the book tomorrow. Right? And that's like, it's like a foundational, fundamental way I want to start my day. And it opens me up to the curiosity. I love the committee. If more people recognize that it is a committee in their head, it's not one mind, it's a few of them, playing cards and talking stuff to each other. We do that. I mean, if you have a drink or you smoke something, you just expand the committee.
We, however, do not do
We
that.
don't.
My committee does. So I think those are segue into, this group's reason for being, right? This is a faith-based institution, right, of the Episcopal flavor. And we struggle with these issues around fear and management of resources and, how we do the right thing, but don't make a fool of ourselves. All those kinds of pressures are there for all of us every day. And I do, because, we are operating within these larger systems that were built before any of us arrived, and yet which some of us benefit from and participate in the creation, reinforcement of, et cetera, et cetera. So what can this group of people, this institution, do to help sort of prevent that othering, that creating that us versus them binary, from y'all's perspective, right? So, what is our charge and how do we move through that? We know what we're supposed to do, but I'd be interested in what y'all's thoughts are about that. And I have a couple of questions.
Can I start with that?
Go for it.
Thanks. Go ahead, Jill.
I want to say, for St. Andrews, keep showing up. And I'm talking specifically about Stu Clyde, no offense. But, because, if you were able to be, for instance, at our annual meeting, which just sounds so boring, but it was such a wonderful kind of, spirit lifting moment back in February, our annual meeting, I read out loud the list of people, the list of institutions that were represented. And it ranged from, Pearl Street AME, St. Andrews Cathedral, AKA sorority, to Blue College, Department of Mental Health. Like, it is, Stupot right now is a place where you can actually encounter people who you would otherwise not encounter unless you went to Stupot. My guess is, besides like the Museum of Art and the two museums, it is the place in Jackson, Mississippi where we will find the most diversity on any given day. Right? It's that corner that is embodying diversity every single day. And you don't have to get in the weeds with people about beliefs or, or whatever. You can meet each other and just have a conversation which generates hope. It also gives other people hope to see you there. So keep showing up at Stupot as often as it makes sense for this congregation to do so as long as you can. And I'm just going to copy myself. Just get curious. Like, follow to the end of your curiosity. I often say when I'm sitting down one-on-one with somebody, particularly who has come to us for help, forgive me. I'm about to ask you a lot of questions. But the reason I'm doing it is because I need to understand before I can make the best decision. And I've never met anyone so far who has resisted that. Because I'm asking what Parker Palmer calls an honest question, which means I really don't know the answer to this question. That's why I'm asking it. This is an honest question, and it's open, meaning like there is nothing that I am presuming when I'm answering it, when I'm asking it. So learning that discipline of asking open, honest questions and following curiosity, I think, will take you where you need to go.
And you still got 12 different ministries? 14. So there's nothing that you can't do, which is in and of itself an amazing opportunity. paying their mortgages, and we, despite our working with them and offering them lots and lots of grace, and it had to be a victory, which is the worst day. Oh my God. I can turn to you. So kudos. And thank you, because the need is tremendous, and it's there for the grace of God. So, yay, St. Andrews and Habitat, if you want to support us, and some of you do, I do know, I see what comes in, and I see your grace and your benevolence, and it's so appreciated, and it makes my heart happy. I feel connected. If you give to Habitat International, I never see a penny of it, so beware. I'm always saying, if it doesn't say Habitat Community Mississippi Capital Area or Jackson, Mississippi, it just goes out into the abyss, and I don't even get to write it. I do think that we could do more, as far as discussions with different groups and different parts of the church, so that the value, and everybody thinks they know Habitat. Well, you might, but I learn something new every day, and I've been there 15 years. So, unlike Stupid, who has this very clear, lovely, incredible list of programs, we need things. We need donations for the restore. We need people to come and work at the restore. We need people who come in the warehouse. We need people who come and paint or build or tote or clean up sites. I mean, it's just a matter of a will and an interest. And if you want to have a further discussion, please call me, call and ask me. And I'll come to any group, anytime that it's humanly possible to explain the intricate nature of what we do, because I can't take the homeless to home ownership. There are a lot of steps in there, but I can help people not be homeless. And they haven't lived into their covenant, and I can protect them anymore. But I just go back to how grateful I am for Bill and his good life.
So I'm gonna, frame the question a little bit different from Vaughn, who's not running one of our currently, funded ministries.
You too.
So, yeah, it's not my role today. So, what can this group of people in this institution do to change the dynamic that I think we're all struggling with when we've talked about and around this us versus them? From your perspective.
I was raised in my early years by my great grandmother. And I'll tell you, I was having lunch with a couple of friends of mine the other day, and it started. I said, well, in 1946, and they just, no, come on, bro. There are people, all of them, have lived incredible lives. And you have a 100% chance of surviving your worst fears, right? You have a lot of stories. I mean, in some ways it doesn't seem significant enough, but it's just like what my heart says the answer is to your question. I think you need to spend more time talking to each other about what your actual lived experiences are. The things you've seen, the things you've been through, the things that have scared the hell out of you, like I warned you. But also the things that have excited you. How you, as you know, in the Persimmon Grove in Sunflower, Mississippi, where I grew up going to church as a little boy, they sang about how you made it over. Right, from thing to thing, from challenge to challenge. Where the Lord's grace showed up in your life, who it looked like, what it looked like. Like, tell those stories to each other in whatever ways we need to organize it. Here's how it goes from being like this very interpersonal individual thing to becoming the character of the church and the character of your ministry. When you get a letter from Stupak or from Habitat of Mississippi, you know the people in the church, in the institution, who need to make sure, you need to make sure they know that that's out. You need to make sure that they know they're looking for it because you know that person, their heart. They have a heart for that work. Right? Those connections are so incredibly powerful. I mean, for anybody who's raised money for anything, the first thing you try to do is identify people in your circle who you think just might be inclined to support it or has a heart for it. And along the way, through the stories, you build these kind of resilient connections that bless you in really wonderful ways. You have to have more of that. My family attends a church that's really, really big. And, you know, the people we really light up when we see them, we light up when we see them. They're the people who we used to go to church with at a much more intimate church, whose stories we know. And if they call us to show up somewhere, we are there.
Vaughn, we've got room in the pews for the Gordon family. So my better half and I have to go dress out for the game, the 10:30 service. So I would ask that if there are questions, we don't really have time for questions because it's 10 till it's 10:20. I want to thank Marilyn McEwen and George Buckley and Paul Gordon. I said Reverend, but they're all reverends in my book, right? We in the Episcopal tradition, we're all ministers, so we're making you honorary ministers today.
Thank you.
Your work inspires us. It helps hold us accountable. It also puts us in a place where we have to wrestle with these issues, and we can't not wrestle with them. So thank you for your honesty and your leadership in our community, in the state, for helping us, I think, be better Episcopalians, better Christians, but also just better human beings. And we can't do that unless we really are attending to the needs of those who receive the short end of the stick. So,
And to these folks who showed up.
absolutely.
And Robert, can I,
Please.
sorry, I'm gonna let two more people make announcements real quick. They can't start the service without the three of us at least, so Jessica's really good at improvising. But Alice and Annette, I'm gonna let y'all talk real quick about some other really quick ways that you can be a part of committing to something, and very easily committing to something today to support other community partners.
First of all, this is about agriculture. First of all, I cannot thank this parish enough for adopting 50 children last year and